Now I call upon the next presenter, Mr. Precious, to present on the topic, characteristics of low vision population in Southeast Nigeria. Mr. Precious, can you please unmute?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're clear.
Yeah, can you also see me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll share my screen now, then I'll begin. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right. So the work was focused on, once again, thank you everyone, and it's a privilege to be here. So the work was focused on characterizing low vision population in southeastern Nigeria. And then I have to acknowledge my lead author, Dr. Samuel. And then I worked on the work with him myself. So I'm going to quickly run through some summary as an outline. Then I would talk about the problems of low vision. I would go ahead to discuss on the methods that we used, applied for the work. Then highlight briefly some key results and data, definitely just a few key results because everything from the work cannot be presented here at the moment. Then I'll conclude. So just as an overview, visual impairment is a major health concern all over the world. There are about 90% of people who are visually impaired living in developing countries. So it's also interesting to know that most cases of visual impairment are preventable. So reducing these implications of the irreversible vision loss is very possible when some necessary strategic interventions are put in place. So owing to this, effectively bringing in eye care services is going to constitute considerably. Just as a classification, there's mild to moderate visual impairment, which is 20/30. I mean, all of these technical words, 20/30 to 20/60 to light perception. People who have 20/200 to 20/400 to light perception, we say they have profound visual impairment. And we have the people who fall within the categories of 20/500 and 20/1000 as near total blindness. When patients or individuals are unable to perceive light at all, that is categorized as total blindness. It's also important to know that the far-reaching socioeconomic implications of visual impairment cannot be overemphasized. Because most of the times, people who have visual impairments, they have drastically reduced quality of life. And a good number of them are alienated from the mainstream of the society, particularly in developing countries. The global causes of visual impairment have been noted. We have the uncorrected refractive error, which is a major contributor. We have cataract, glaucoma. Glaucoma contributes about 43%. Cataract contributes about 33%. Uncorrected refractive error contributes 18%. We have corneal opacities, diabetic retinopathy, and age-related macular degeneration contributing about 1% each. And about 18% of the causes of visual impairment has been undetermined so far. As a statement of the problem, among Nigerians that are 40 years and above, a clinical and epidemiological research conducted by the Nigerian Blindness Survey in 2017 revealed that about over 1 million Nigerians are blind. I mean, either profound, near total, or have visual impairments. There are 2.7 million adults who have moderate visual impairment, and about 400,000 of this population have severe visual impairment. So the work was focused on characterizing these population. In Nigeria, cataract is the leading cause of blindness and visual impairment with a prevalence of 33%. We have refractive errors also contributing immensely to the burden of visual impairment in Nigeria. We have an 18.2% prevalence of glaucoma in the country, with its social and economic implications. Despite this, there is no accurate and comprehensive population-based data that is available to guide policymakers and people who provide eye care services. Despite how broad the country is and the diversity in terms of economics, in terms of geography, in terms of ethnicity, and in terms of culture. So as a method, it was, the study was a cross-sectional descriptive study. We collected data on an ongoing basis. During the, we had departmental eye screening outreaches across the states, the 5 eastern states of Nigeria. So we collected data on an ongoing basis between October 2020 and mid 2021. So we used ophthalmoscopes and pen lights to establish cause of low vision. Clinicians were also trained to, utilize objective and subjective refraction, the skill in assessing individuals who were screened, and those who had visual acuity of less than 6/8 to light perception were identified as low vision subjects according to WHO standard for categorizing. So for those individuals, we used structured questionnaires to collect socio-demographic data in order to characterize them. In terms of ethical consideration, we got ethical approval from the Abia State University Ethics Board, the Ministry of Health, Abia State Ministry of Health, and of course, informed consent. We also screened, during the screening, for people who were younger than 18 years, we had to obtain consent from their parents. Data collected was cleaned and analyzed using the statistical package for the social sciences. And significance level was tested at 95%. So just brief social demographic results. A total of about 1,473 individuals were screened during the outreaches across the 5 states in southeastern Nigeria. They were aged between 8 to 18 years with a mean age of 53.25 and a standard deviation of 14.28. We had a total of 239 persons corresponding to 16.2% prevalence of low vision in the population, those who had visual acuity that were worse than 6/18 to light perception, according to the WHO standard for categorization. Just as a breakdown, of the 239 persons who had low vision, 127 had moderate low vision, 55 had severe low vision, 32 had profound low vision, and 25 were nearly totally blind. So the major causes of low vision or visual impairment from our study were cataracts in 32.6% of the respondents, glaucoma in 22% of the respondents. We also had corneal ulcer and scar in 9.6% of the respondents. These were the highest causes. Of course, we also recorded cone dystrophy and myopia, but they occurred very least. Hypothesis, we tested hypothesis, and we're trying to establish, since the outreach is targeted rural and urban areas in each of the states we went for. So we were trying to test if there was a relationship between living in a rural area and living in an urban area with being having low vision. We wanted to check relationship between location and visual impairment. So we, however, did not find a statistically associated difference. So living in a rural or urban area was not related in any way to having visual impairment from our study. We also checked the relationship between basic socio-demographic variables of respondents with visual impairment. However, age showed no statistical relationship with visual impairment, sex showed none, and the occupation of respondents were not statistically associated with visual impairment. So we found out as a discussion that there was this disparity in occurrence. Sure, people who lived in urban areas from descriptive statistics showed to have more visual impairments than those who lived in rural areas, right? However, when it was subjected to the chi-square test, this difference was not statistically significant. So, but as a discussion, this may have been in terms of prevalence, this may have been because most of the screening activities were carried out in urban areas. So we had more population from the urban areas, which was reflected in getting a higher prevalence in this area. So it is also known that one of the highest risk factors for many eye diseases, specifically cataract, glaucoma, and some retinal, particularly, of course, age-related macular degeneration, that age is a very strong factor. Interestingly, our study and statistical analysis showed that through testing of hypothesis showed that age was not statistically associated with visual impairment in our population study. All right. Having found out that moderate visual impairment was represented in more than half of the entire population of our study, more than half of the population in our study that had visual impairment, it gives us a knowledge that visual impairment can actually be tackled. So visual acuity is a possible factor that affects the use of vision aids with individuals who had worse visual acuity being less likely to find low vision devices useful. It was part of the wanted to check, or asked the question to check, would you want to use visual aids? So we found out that individuals with worse visual acuity were still less likely to find low vision devices useful. As a conclusion, just highlights from the study. Our study recorded a 16.2% prevalence of visual impairment, with moderate vision impairment being the most occurring. We recorded that cataract and glaucoma were the most identified causes of visual impairment in the study area. So vision loss was not dependent on age, sex, or occupation of individuals, as well as the residents. So we know that whether being in a rural or in an urban area, it was not statistically associated with being visually impaired. I mean, from our findings from our study, there should be population-based data on blindness. It should be routinely. I mean that the large-scale population survey we had was from 2007. I mean, a lot has happened in over 15 years, about 15 years now. There should be large-scale population-based data collected, and it should be routinely. We have some surveys like the National Nutrition Survey in Nigeria. We have the Demographic and Health Survey conducted once in 3 years. I mean, it could also be incorporated because visual impairment largely impacts the quality of life. We are recommending also that the visual impairment interventions should be context tailored. However, because of what we found in our study, rural or urban areas need these interventions, but these interventions should be context based. I mean, go to a rural area, you know what they need, you give them interventions that are speaking to their needs, and also for those in urban areas.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I wanted to know. All right, so we are also recommending a large-scale screening across the study regions, and possibly should be extended to other regions in the country. And it should be devoid of sex and age differentials, because everyone should be part of it. Our study did not show that there was going to be any difference based on age and based on sex. The screenings, the interventions will lead to an early identification and then lifestyle interventions, because a huge percentage of visual impairments are largely preventable just with lifestyle interventions and detecting early with corrective activities, including the services of an optometrist or an optician. So we are suggesting that in the country, eye screening should be incorporated into mandatory routine health checks for everyone, both young and old, whoever, students, civil and public servants, retirees. Routine eye screening should be incorporated, including, for acceptance into university, as part of screening for jobs. This should be required. Thank you so much. These are the references, and then thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Precious. It's a wonderful presentation on the topic of characteristics of the low vision population in Southeast Nigeria. Dear participants, please raise question in the chat box so that we can ask Mr. Precious to answer on that. So we received the first question here. Why do you think age, disease, end titles like DM and hypertension were non-statistical significant in your study? Mr. Precious. You are in. Please unmute and you can talk. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Your first question here displayed in the
yes,
chat.
I had the question. I had the question.
Okay.
So yeah, the question is why age and disease entities like diabetes mellitus and hypertension were not statistically significant in our study. This was not captured within the scope of our study. The study was a cross-sectional descriptive study. It was not clinical in any way, and there was no invasive clinical procedure. So we did not capture variables like looking at diabetes mellitus, either history or current condition, and hypertension. It was not part of what was approved by our in our study protocol as part of the ethics. It was not captured. Thank you.
You have a next question, Mr. Precious. What causes cancer of the cornea, and at what stage can cataract be operated upon?
Sorry. Okay. If I had. Okay.
Yeah. What causes cancer of the cornea, and at what stage can cataract be operated upon?
Okay. Thank you so much. I mean, the cancer of the cornea is just going to be more like every other cancer with no particular cause. There are many things, and it has a lot to do with genetics, and improper eye care. But this is just on a very lighter note. It has a lot to do with genetic, and like I already mentioned, that there are many causes of visual impairment that are undetermined, certified by the World Health Organization. They are largely undetermined. So at what stage can cataract be operated? It's going to basically be at the very early stages before it develops into a more difficult situation. However, in the field of public health, prevention is always the best and the safest option. And prevention is going to be achieved with regular eye clinics, which cost very little, or like most of the outreaches we have embarked on, free for the population. So screening is a very important tool in early detection and corrective actions, even more than the stages of operation and management. Thank you.
Okay, you have another question here. How does the outcome of this research influence policy making in terms of ensuring integration of eye care into primary health care in Nigeria?
All right, so the primary health care in Nigeria, I'm sure has some aspects of eye care which is least given attention. So the findings from this study is currently being escalated at the Department of Public Health, the Department of Optometry, working in collaboration with the Department of Public Health in the Abia State University. My lead author is from the Department of Optometry, and then I am from the Department of Public Health. So we are working together to extract findings of this, present in seminars, and working towards seeing if we can, through the office of the head of department, establish some communication with the Abia State Ministry of Health, who will definitely relate with the Abia State Primary Healthcare Development Agency, such that some of these screenings that are necessary for eye care and eye health are incorporated into basic primary care at even healthcare centers across communities. So just to answer again, we are working towards escalating the findings of this study. We have some other aspects of the study we are still pulling together. The work is still ongoing with other colleagues, so that when we've been able to establish this result, we could harmonize everything together, then go ahead with seeking for knowledge transmission and meeting with key stakeholders to ensure that this becomes an integral component of the primary healthcare in Abia State, Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Precious. Dear participants, the poll is open for Mr. Precious, and you can poll for the title he presented in this public stream. So thank you so much, Mr. Precious. You can unshare your screen, as well as you can make yourself as a participant and be online.